And I am back. It's the Brazil Expat Journal, the BJ you can trust. And it's Carnival, guys. You cannot trust that many BJs out there. My partner Pete is coming at some point, and we got a great show for you tonight. We have Boyce Blake on. He's a stand-up comedian and an American who's been living in Rio for over a decade. I don't know how, but he's going to tell us a little bit of how he survived in Rio for that long. He's been working in education to pay the bills, but his passion for comedy has led him to help build an all English powerhouse stand up comedy team in Rio. It's been so successful that now it's opened the door for him to take the show on the road. So he's coming to São Paulo on March 1st. So we're going to talk to him about his journey to Brazil, his life in Brazil, and also, of course, some stand up in Brazil. But before that, guys, today we're on the stand up wagon tonight because just last week, I ran into somebody I hadn't seen in a very long time. And shout out to Kim Lavone, who used to do the Improbable Comedy down here. And she had a few stand-up shows also in English. And I actually did a set. It was like an open mic. And Regis was there. And I just saw Regis for the first time in a long time, a couple weeks ago. And I said, man, I'm going to promo you. And he's going to be on the show too, probably the following week or the week after. It's going to be in Portuguese, so we're going to do another test drive of the BJ in Portuguese. But I do want to promo his show, which is going to be on the 24th of February. So this Saturday at Boteco do Chechel, which is right by Peixoto Gomide, around the Frecaneca, Augusta area. Just, look that up, Boteco do Chechel. And here's his promo. It will be in Portuguese, but it's a funny promo, so I'm going to play it. Here we go.
Gran Luxo Super é uma noite de comédia stand-up muito especial. É feita por pessoas da comunidade LGBTQIA+, para pessoas da comunidade. É um espaço seguro onde você pode vir, se divertir e dar muita risada. Você pode vir solteiro, pode vir de casal, pode vir de trisal, pode vir do jeito que você quiser. Ah, e se você for hétero, não tem problema, pode vir também. Vamos dar risada junto. Aquenda, bora dar risada.
All right, guys. And I will give you his
Aquenda Gran Luxo Super é uma noite de comédia stand-up muito especial.
Let's remove that. And his Instagram is Regis La. Regis La. So REGISLA. And then you can find out where Boteco do Chechel is. It's a cool little corner bar down there. But anyhow, let's get to what we're really here for tonight, and that's Mr. Boyce. Are you there, sir? Let me unmute you there. Are you there, mister?
I am. How you doing tonight, Phil?
I am great. It's so good to be in contact with you again. Guys, I got this message I get messages from a lot of people, and I don't know who it is a lot of the time. And I'm like, who is this person? Because I couldn't tell by the picture. And then I went into his Facebook page. I was like, it's the man. It's Boyce. I love this dude. So we're gonna have fun tonight because he's a fun guy, and stand up just seems like a natural for you. But before we get to that, people that come on the show, man, we got to find out what brought you to São Paulo. What's life on São Paulo? What brought you to Brazil? What's life like in Rio? So give us a little backstory before we get to promoting your show and talking about stand-up.
For sure. Well, there's always, I always say this when you meet most gringos that are down here, there's always a Brazilian to blame. So I met a Carioca da Gema. I had my wife is from Rio, my ex-wife now. And we met back in 2004. And we got married in the States, and I have a daughter now who's 16, and so she was born there. And we just being married to a Brazilian, you get immersed in Brazilian culture whether or not you want to, especially with a Carioca from Rio. And so we were there for a while. And anyone who's American knows that around 2008 things started to get kind of sour. With the economy, and things were taking kind of a really hard downturn. And I was working at the time, I was working in sales, and I was bar managing as well. And just, I don't know, man, everything was just so hard to make a living, especially in that area. And we had always, people toy with the idea of retiring to places like Rio or Honduras or, Paraguay. And I had a lot of friends of mine that were, what they call semi-retired, where they kind of moved to places like that, and they were, living it up and having a good time. They've resigned themselves to the fact they're never going to be millionaires. But they were someplace that was really nice to live. And and my my wife at the time, she was really homesick. And I've never been the type of person that's afraid of change. So she said, "Would you give it a shot? Would you move down to Rio for a while, just to see if you like it?" And I said, "Sure." I said, "Why not?" And there wasn't much going on in the States at the time. And so I said, "Yeah, why the hell? Why not take a little adventure?" And so so that's really the reason why. And I'm still here. I have no plans on going anywhere. And it's as we say in Portuguese, Brasil lá, doce lá. So that's me up until now.
Wait, just real quick, because I missed. Where were you from originally? Up in the States?
I'm kind of a weird bounce around guy. I was born in Columbia, South Carolina. I don't have an accent anymore because when I was almost 8 years old. After my parents split, we moved to Silver Spring, Maryland, right outside of DC, about 15 minutes away. And so I was pretty much raised there. But I went back and forth and saw my family in Carolina. But that was primarily where I was raised, was Silver Spring and inside and outside of DC.
Great. And was it an easy transition for you down here in Rio? Because Rio's a chaotic city, even for me.
Man, as they say, it is not for beginners. You hear all these scary statistics about, only 5% of the population speak English. You're going to have to learn Portuguese, which is a nightmare, for a marble-mouthed, gringo from the Northeast. There's all the challenges that go with it. But yeah, it was a little scary at first, but I don't know, when I got down here, I mean, one of the things that makes it so, I guess this is so cliche, but Brazilians make it easy. When you get a good friend circle, and I was lucky enough that, my ex-wife had a really big family full of people who, they spoke a little bit of English, and, they were nice enough to take me around and let me get comfortable. But they don't take it easy on you here. So when I started working here, I hit the ground running with work, in terms of education and teaching. And I ended up teaching in just about, it's funny because I meet Cariocas, and they're like, someone will mention a city somewhere, and the Cariocas are like, "Where's that?" And I'm like, "Oh, that's just outside of Tijuca, right about 20 minutes to the northeast." And they're like, "How do you know that?" Because I used to work. And everything okay?
Sorry about that. Speaking of chaotic, I had to close the window because
No
my neighbor just arrived, and I can't pay attention to you and them at the same time.
No problem, man. It's all good. Sometimes I gotta cook while I teach online, so you might hear a pan rattle from time to time.
Oh, that's fine.
But so it wasn't easy in the beginning, but like I said, the Brazilians make it easy. If you give them just a little bit of your time and respect in terms of learning the language and trying to appreciate the culture and trying to get the rhythm of things, they'll welcome you with open arms, and it's really nice.
Well, that's so good that you say that, because one of the reasons I have this podcast, one is to talk to real cool people, but two is it's a bit of a guide for people that are coming to Brazil.
For sure.
Different things that they can do down here. And one thing that we stress so much on this channel is, guys, you are in Brazil, be with the Brazilians. I mean, don't lose your identity, of course. You're an American, you're an Englishman, you're a Frenchman, whatever it is. Don't lose your identity, but you're in Brazil. Try to learn a bit of the language, try to get into some of the culture, and I think that makes it easier. And Brazilians are very welcome.
Sure.
They're very welcome.
I'm one of those people. I hate the word expat. I think expat just means an immigrant with money. And that's how I understood it. And when you're here, especially when I moved to Rio, there were so many that you meet a lot of gringos here, but they're what I like to call ivory tower gringos, where they, they've all got a spouse that's working in oil and gas, or, they're working in big business, and they're not, they're happy because they're by the beach, but they don't, they don't want to mingle, man. They don't want to, they don't want to have a, they don't want to have a dirty water hot dog at 2:00 in the morning outside of a Pé Sujo downtown in Centro, which is a very karaoke experience. And, so you run into a few that are like that. But yeah, I've never been culturally resistant. I've always been like, I've traveled around. I've been to Europe and I've been to other places, and and my thing is always, do when you're in Rome, when in Rome, do as the Romans do, and that's how it really was down here. There's culture shock. There's all the regular stages of culture shock, and you go through it in cycles. It's funny how I remember reading about it, about the different cycles of culture shock, and I was like, well, I'm not going to go through that because I'm me, damn it. I'm Mr. Cool Guy. And you still experience them, but the more open you are and the more, kind of like settled in you get, the easier it is to, to absorb that and to soak it up. And you don't have to lose yourself, completely in it, but if you're going to live in a culture and you're going to live in a place, we as Americans, we always run into people who are from other countries, and we get disgusted when we see people from our country say things like, well, if you're here, you got to speak English. If you're here, you gotta try to become an American. And Brazilians don't do that at all. That's not an aspect of their culture whatsoever. But they're still very welcoming. So it's like, man, it's once you all you got to do is just demonstrate a little bit of love, to the culture, and you're in, it's not.
You're in. After that first churrasco, man, you are Brazilian. The Brazilians will tell you that. It's like, no, você é brasileiro, and you're like, yes, I am. Yes, I am.
I think one of the turning moments in my experience here was I was watching someone make a caipirinha, and I said to them, you're going to cut the white meat off the center, right? So it's not bitter. And you could hear the music stop, and like 9 people turned and looked at me, and they're like, what did you say? And I was like, you're going to cut the white. I was like, you're going to cut the white meat off so it's not bitter, right? And they were like, meu Deus do céu, cara, ele entende. I was like, yeah, that's how you make a caipirinha. And they were like, man, he knows us. I was like, yeah, dude, I'm down. I'm hip. I'm with it. I got a tube of super glue in my refrigerator. Like, I'm almost there. I'm half Brazilian.
Do you have the eggs in the refrigerator though? That's when you get. That's when you go real Brazilian.
Well, by the way, I even have a joke where I tell people, they're like, I think I'm more carioca than you. And, and people go, really, oh, is it because your Portuguese is so good? And I go, nope. And they go, are you a good dancer? And I go, no. And they go, well, then what the hell are you talking about? I was like, because in my refrigerator right now, if you open inside the door, there's half a lime and a tube of super glue. And they're like, wow. They're like, yeah, oh my God. Yeah, he gets it. He knows. And, yeah, absolutely.
By the way, let me give a few shout outs to folks that signed in. We got Natalia Souza. Hey there, Miss Natalia.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Miss Natalia. I believe that's my student.
No, that's someone very close and near and dear to my heart here in Rio.
Oh, is that your wife?
Not my wife, but my significant other.
Oh, great. Well, welcome, Natalia. You have the same last name as my student. And Mr. Travelmatic, what's up? He's always joining the channel. He's a traveler to Brazil, frequent traveler to Brazil. He hasn't settled down here, but he's always around, and he's a good
right on, man. Thanks for tuning in, brother.
Yeah, as we go on, usually people sign in a little bit later, and then always, guys, you can get the playback later. It's live now, but it'll stay on the channel. But you told a joke, so let's get right into how it is you transition into the comedy side of things.
My comedy story is kind of weird. I tried when I was living back home. I went up. I did open mics in DC and around Maryland. And I had a mentor. There was a guy that I worked with. His name was Bill King, and he opened for some legends, man. He opened for Sam Kinison. He opened for Bill Hicks, and he kind of took me under his wing a little bit. And I was able to get a little training and get a little mentorship. And then unfortunately we lost Bill. Bill passed away. and a lot of work stuff was going on at the time. So I just kind of shut it down. It wasn't really going anywhere for me. And DC is it's very competitive. It's very gate kept over there. You got to like know somebody to to try to get anywhere. And it's kind of tough. And at that time it was, I'm sure the scene's much different now. This is like a million years ago. But yeah, so when I came down here, I've always wanted to do stand-up comedy ever since I was little. I grew up watching like Johnny Carson, and the coolest guest on Johnny Carson was always they were always the comedians. And you'd watch guys that would go on the show, and you'd watch them make Johnny Carson laugh. If you could crack Johnny up, he'd invite you over on the couch.
Yeah, invited you on the couch.
Yeah, that was like that was the holy grail, man. So most kids are like, you'd ask like a 5 or a 6-year-old in the 80s, you're like, what do you want to be when you grow up? Like, I want to be a fireman, or I want to be Batman. They'd be like, Boyce, what do you want to do when you grow up? I was like, I want to get on the sofa on Johnny Carson. And they're like, all right, this kid needs to see a psychologist. Time to put little Boyce in therapy. And so I always had that bug, and I was always like singing and dancing and trying to tell jokes and making fun of stuff and doing impressions. And so it's always kind of been there. Like no matter what I'm doing, it's always kind of in the back there. When I bartended, I was like, that was like doing stand up every night. Because you're having to entertain 20, 30, 40 people. And that was a big aspect of my work. And so when I came here, oddly enough, what got me into comedy here in Rio was jujitsu. I trained jujitsu, and where I was training, the maestri there came to me and he said, "Look, there's a guy coming from Ireland, and my maestri, he doesn't speak a lot of English." And so he said, "There's a guy coming from Ireland. I cannot understand a word this guy says. So could you please, could you be my translator?" Because he knew I spoke Portuguese. And I said, sure. I was like, yeah, of course not. It'd be my honor. And he's like, yeah, he's going to come get his black belt. He's going to be here for about 3 weeks or so. And so just pal around with him and be my translator. And I said, okay, cool. And so this guy got here from Ireland. His name is Mustafa Syed. He's a really funny comedian. So shout out to Mustafa if you hear this episode, man. This is all your fault. So we were training, and we were just palling around, and we went out a couple times, after training, and he was like, dude, he's like, you're really funny. Have you ever done comedy before? And I said, yeah, I was like, 1,000 years ago. And he said, well, you're doing comedy here, right? And I go, no. I was like, in Portuguese? No way. And he goes, no, in English. And I was like, who the hell is doing stand-up comedy in English in Rio? And he hooked me up with a group who I still perform with called Rio Night Live. And Rio Night Live was the brainchild of just like a handful of expats, probably I think around 2015. And it was real loose. It was kind of just a hang for people to pop in and tell some funny stories. And you had a couple guys that had stand-up experience that were doing it, but it was really loose, and it wasn't like a regular thing, and it wasn't they weren't doing big clubs or anything like that. And I really liked it. And so he said, well, why don't you come out? And so my buddy from jiu-jitsu says, well, come see the show. And I went, and I was like, oh my God. I was like, holy shit, this is crazy that this is a thing in Rio de Janeiro. And I talked to the organizer, whose name is Amitov. What's up, dude? Big shout out to Amit. He's like the godfather of Rio Night Live. He said, well, yeah. He goes, well, why don't you come up and do 5 minutes, at our next show? And I did it, and I felt pretty good, and the feedback was nice, and kind of the rest is history. I've taken on a little bit of a bigger role with that group because it's a lot to manage, and we've gone on to we started doing bigger venues, and we did a little vaquinha, as we say in Portuguese, and saved up to buy a sound system so that we weren't at the mercy of the venues. So we kind of I was raised around DC in the punk rock scene, and so I'm very DIY. I book shows and did show promotions, and I play music, and I played in bands all through my teen years and my early 20s. And so that punk rock ethic of I just need 4 walls and a semi-functioning bathroom, and then I've got a venue. I was like, let's just do it. And I really took that. I tried to keep that punk rock ethos when I started doing stand up here, because it's very difficult. There's a lot of gatekeepers to trying to get a venue. And when you tell people in Rio, you're like, yeah, we're doing stand-up comedy in English. And they're like, that's adorable. Thanks. Next. And you're like, oh. So what we had to do was we had to go find bars that were willing to, let us keep the door. And we were lugging our own sound, we're like a band, man. We're like lugging our own sound equipment and lights and everything, and trying to get people to come out, and really trying to hype it up. And we thought, I'll be honest, I thought we were dead after the pandemic. The pandemic really like just doused our fire. And then last year at the beginning of 2023, we all kind of sat down and had a little come to Jesus meeting. And I said, look, either this is either going to be like the end of the movie, The Wild Bunch. We're going to go out guns blazing, or we're going to shoot our way out of this. And everyone decided, yeah, let's do it. So we shot for some bigger venues, and we were able to, it really, comedy happens as a community. So we got very fortunate to hook up with some amazing people in 2023 and get to network a little bit better. We're now working with we've been working with the very famous, the very funny Fernando Caruso, who is famous all over Brazil, but loves to perform with us. So and he's based out of Rio, so he's joined our group. We're fortunate enough to get people like the gentleman who's on the screen right now, Mr. João Velho, who performs with us as well. And we added a ton of new performers last year, and really having we tried to emphasize a real big we tried to keep our emphasis on quality, in terms of telling everyone to keep writing and keep getting better and keep practicing and keep coming to open mics. And we really took off last year. Like last year, I think I can say honestly, last year was our best year ever. Like there's no comparison to how awesome last year was. And so that's where we are now. Now we're touring. Now parts of our group are taking off and headed to São Paulo and going to going on to all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, so guys, good segue here for the show that's in São Paulo. If you look at the screen, if you happen to be looking at the screen, stand up in English, first time ever in São Paulo. But if you're not, I'm reading it for you. His flyer, Chris Strait, and then we got our boys down here, Boyce. And who's the gentleman next to you?
That would be Mr. the hilarious Vinicius Areias. We call him Vinny Areias. He is an award-winning director here. And he's whatever he does, he's amazing at, and he's also a great stand-up comedian. So like that, awesome. He is like the Renaissance man.
So this Friday, March 1st, guys, at 8:00.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Vinny, that's my hetero life mate right there, Vinny. I'm taking with me as like my emotional support animal.
Oh, nice. So it's at my fucking comedy club at Alameda Santos, and for those that don't know São Paulo geography, that's very close to Avenida Paulista. So if you know how to get to Paulista, you'll be able to get to Alameda Santos, Jardim Paulista. So it's right there, guys, and I'll post that in the comment section after we get off the air, so you can get the address and everything. But it's really easy to get to, easy access by Metro. You should be able to find that real easy. And the tickets are at simpla.com. So
there's one little, just a quick modification. The tickets are actually on Clube de Ingressos, clubedeingressos.com.
Let me write that down. Clube.
Yeah, there was a little bit of a mix up with the ticket source. I'm going to fix that on the flyer this week and put another one out.
Is this correct here? What I put on the screen? Clube de Ingressos.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so guys, go to clubedeingressos.com, not Simpla, to get your tickets. Can you get tickets at the door?
Oh, absolutely.
All right, so I get
sure.
mine at the door because I finish work around 6:30, 7 o'clock.
I pray we're gonna sell out, but I got a pretty good hunch that there will still be tickets at the door.
All right, cool. I'll drop by and I'll try to get me.
Yay! Hooray! I love it.
I'll try to get me a seat there at Clube de Ingressos. Now, let's get into like the nitty gritty of comedy, because I just went to a show, like I was telling you guys last week, and I was telling Boyce about this. I believe I was where, like, I get like the performance side of it, and I love the performance side of the stand-up in Portuguese, but like I didn't laugh once, and I felt really bad because I was like, I felt like I was disrespecting the comics because it's very fast and there's a lot of cultural touches and things like that that just like go over my head. Like there's this one joke. I talked to the guy, I really loved his set, even though I didn't laugh. I felt so bad. I told him I'm so sorry, but I loved his set. And then I only got his joke when he explained it to me outside. I was like, well, that was really funny, you know. But
Yeah.
like, how was it for you? One, listening to stand up in Portuguese, and do you get the stand up in Portuguese? Because for me, it's really hard to get.
Man, it really depends. I'll tell you, it really depends on the comic.
Okay.
There are comics that are they're almost completely and solely basing their jokes on like Brazilian cultural references, and like music and things like that. And when you have that, if I'm lucky, I'll catch a certain percentage of it, you know, and then the rest of it is like a 747 over my head, just whoa. And I go, yeah, and it stinks when that happens. However, there are tons of comedians that I'm friends with here that, you know, they talk about, you know, you'd be surprised how much, you know, how relative and how parallel their comedy is to what we're used to. You know, they're talking about relationships, they're talking about, you know, their sex lives, they're talking about breakups, they're talking about having kids, being parents, things like that. You know, they're touching on topics that are really universal. And when they're doing that, I mean, I have literally thought I had to go. There have been several times watching some of my, you know, like my Brazilian friends go up in Portuguese that I thought I was going to have to go to the hospital, like with a broken rib, because I was just on the floor. And in a way, and it's funny because like as gringos, like when Portuguese is your second language, you flip out when that happens because like you don't realize it when it's happening. You're just laughing. You're just like, but at the end of it, you're like, oh my god, I understood that. Jesus, like my Portuguese, you know, those Portuguese lessons are paying off. But that, you know, a lot of that you pick up through osmosis as you pick up the culture. You know, there's tons of stuff. There's tons of American comics that if they came here, you know, for example, Chris, who's coming here, you know, we're in constant conversation about, you know, what kind of material he's going to use because he's never performed here. And, you know, I have the advantage and the privilege of kind of, you know, understanding Brazilian culture a little bit. You know, I would never say I have a full grasp of it. But, you know, it kind of puts you at a disadvantage when you're coming down here doing it for the first time in front of Brazilian audiences. So I've tried to kind of, you know, get him a little guided and set up and, you know, telling him what's, you know, kind of what's funny here and what's not. So yeah, but that is a problem though. I mean, it still happens. I'll go see guys in Portuguese and I'm like, oh, it's one of those, like, it's just all pop culture stuff. And I'm lost right now.
I feel you. Funnily enough, you know who always cracks me up? And actually, I'm going to go see a show with them are the drag queens. I don't know. I think it's because it's the personality.
Drag queens are funny in any languge. Like
I'm gonna go see a show with.
They're the biggest cheaters in comedy.
Yes,
you know, when all else fails, just do a funny lip sync to Diana Ross, and you can
exactly like Silvete Montilo, Nani Peoples. Like I crack up, but I think it's their whole personality, so it makes it easier to get the funny because it's just the whole package. And it's not here's a setup and here's a joke. Here's a setup and here's a joke. And I'm like, I missed a little bit of that. And wait, we got some questions here. I was going to ask you something, but first, Vinny is funny as hell, João Velho said.
Vinny is funny as hell.
You seem to agree. Now, Natalia, she asked, Boyce, how do you describe being on stage? What is that feeling like for you?
Oh, man. I kind of, in the beginning, I was, you know, I thought I was going to throw up. I thought I was going to, I don't know, have a nervous breakdown. I thought I was going to forget everything. Now, after doing it for a while, I always get nervous at first, but I always try to remind myself that the more comfortable I am, the better it's going to go. So I try to, you know, this is going to sound so like ooh, like woo woo. But I try to do a lot of like positive affirmation before I step up there. I'm like, you belong there. Like, you know, there's a reason why you're going up there. You know, there's people here to see you. you owe them, so you don't get to be bad. You don't get to have a bad night tonight. So you need to get up there and do what you practiced and, do what you say you were going to do. So in a way, it's at this, it really depends on where you're at in terms of your experience. Now, sometimes when I say, and please don't take me wrong, when I say sometimes it feels like I'm doing a job. But it does sometimes feel, when you go up there, like I got a job to do, like I gotta be funny. I don't really have an opportunity. I can't fall tonight. But it's overall, it's always thrilling. Overall, I mean, like when you say, how do you describe being on stage? There's when you're doing it right and it goes well and you have a good show, there's nothing better. There's just no better feeling than knowing that your imagination and your words and something that you created, got an emotional response out of a room full of people. And it's not like singing, it's not like singing karaoke, and it's not like being in a cover band. Especially if you're writing your own original material, there's just something very magical about like, oh my God, like I look, Mom, I used my words, and you're able to create this vibe, and you're able to kind of, paint pictures, and you're able to make connections with people. I think some of the best things that can happen is, when you get off stage, when you get off and people come up to you and they say things like, oh my God, like, that what you said about, XYZ is exactly right. Like that's the best way I've ever heard anybody put it. So like I said, I always had this feeling from a very young age that this is what I wanted to do. So when I'm on stage, I feel at home. Like I feel okay, like now, like, okay, good. Now I'm where I'm supposed to be, because I'm too weird for most normal interactions day to day. I seem to look like I'm on stage when you've seen me in person. Phil, you know me, and you've been around me like in casual conversation. I'm very animated and I talk with my hands, and I don't know. I know that if you're going to talk to me, I don't want the conversation to be boring.
Yeah, your personality. So like half of the work is done. Half of the work is done. Yeah.
So yeah, I try to tell people I'm exactly how I am on stage is exactly how I am in real life. It's a little more amplified for the show. But yeah, on stage I feel at home. I think that's.
Well, I'll tell you, because you did mention singing karaoke and cover bands, and man, if I'm at the right place at a karaoke bar, like I like to go to karaoke bars here where you're just like with regular people, all the drunks and fuck ups and everybody. Mm-hmm. And when you're singing a song and everybody's just joining with you, it's a great feeling. So like the connection is a great feeling. And I have a band too. And although we do a few originals and some covers, but I never do a cover like to sound exactly like the record. Like I'll take a slow song and play it fast, or I'll take a rock and roll song and it becomes an R&B song. I always mix it up, and I get the same feeling because it's like something I created. I'm bringing my culture, or the culture I grew up in, because I was born in Brazil, but I grew up in the States. So for me,
I forgot. Where are you from again?
I was born in Brazil, but I grew up in Jersey. So I went to the U.S. when I was 5 or 6.
Okay.
So I'm bringing that crazy Jersey energy to all my shows. and for me, sometimes it's nerve-wracking because I know Brazilians aren't used to like that intense, like in your face, fuck you energy, which, we bring. And it's such a good feeling when
from Jersey? No, Phil, what are you talking about? That's not the Jersey vibe.
Oh, we're the nicest people in the world.
That's true.
But and if you don't agree, fuck you. Anyway,
exactly. Pump your own fucking gas.
Yeah, so it's like it's a similar feeling, man. When you have that connection, when you're bringing something that's not familiar, especially to a Brazilian crowd, and they get it, and you're vibing, and it's like, well, you probably remember this from your teaching days at Mizzou, the flow experience.
For sure, yeah, for sure.
It's a total flow experience. But guys, we have more questions here. I'm going to slip in one question from Pete. He's having a few audio issues before I get to some people in the comment section here. But Pete asked if you feel more obligated to be funny or to be truthful?
Man, that's an awesome question. I would say that I feel more obligated to be funny because that's what people are there for.
Mm-hmm.
If you're up there, if you're up there and you're talking about yourself and you're not truthful, boy, send me a kiss, please. Mwah. Huge kisses from my boy João. Sorry, Carioca. Mwah, mwah. 2 kisses. Jesus, what am I thinking? I know. I think this is a great question for comedians because I don't know, the current environment in comedy is this. There's a lot of famous comedians that take themselves way too seriously. And they're kind of, I forget who the basketball player was that said we were smelling ourselves. There's a lot of comedians that are smelling themselves these days lately. And you're supposed to be honest up there. You know, if you're talking about yourself and something that's rooted in yourself. When I do stand up, I talk about my divorce. I talk about my love life. I talk about being a parent. I talk about the fact that, you know, sometimes raising a teenager is annoying. I don't have this sparkly, lovey, like, you know, banter with my child, you know, so we're very like plain spoken with each other. You know, and that's, I mean, so in that sense, I'm being truthful. If I'm talking about my opinions on something, you know, I have a part in my act where I say that I am, you know, I'm primarily left. I consider myself, you know, I'm a dirtbag leftist. And I just say it because conservatives have, you know, in my opinion, they've lost their freaking minds. And it's a very exaggerated joke. I believe it. It doesn't mean that I don't believe the opposite too. You know, people on my team can be just as equally ridiculous. There's idiots roaming around flying every type of flag you can imagine. And, you know, so they're not immune to me either. So yeah, I mean, I think the truthfulness should be really organic. I think if you're a comedian and you're worried about if you think you're not being honest on stage, you need to sit down with your notepad. Because something's going wrong. What you're doing is you're pandering and you're trying to cater to people. So yeah, I would say my focus is more on the funny, because that's what people are there for. And I can tell, and the thing is, you can tell an audience anything. It doesn't matter what side of the spectrum you're on, politically or socially or whatever. If you're, you know, gay, straight, whatever, it's got to be funny. You know what I mean? It's got to. The first question you're supposed to be asking yourself is it funny? And if it's not funny, then brother, you got work to do. You know, you have homework to do. And there's a lot of people out there that go like, yeah, but I got this thing I really want to say. Well, is it funny? Well, not yet, but you know, okay, well then shut up and go back and keep writing.
Exactly.
And you know, that's all there is to it. There's so many people out there from all sides that are so interested in being, you know, and either virtue signaling on the, you know, right or left, it doesn't matter what side, that they forget to be funny. And then some of them they're doing the worst thing ever, which is taking themselves too goddamn seriously. You know, you're a clown, dude. You're if you're up there, I hate to tell you this, but you're a clown. And if you're up there saying, I am the truth teller, I am the breaker of, shut up. Just you're you know, you're like, it's like that South Park episode where everybody's farting in wine glasses and smelling it. You know, it's just, God, Jesus Christ. I won't say her name, but there was there's a very famous female comedian that basically was like, you know, we are the last line of defense for the truth in the world. And I was like, if I want to vomit out of every orifice of my body when I heard that, because I was like, what, huh? Like, when did we become gurus? When did when did comedians become that? That's not who we are. You know, so
I agree, man. I agree, because for me, I'm as passionate about stand-up comedy as maybe you are, and there's comics that are you can tell they're more conservative, some are more liberal. If it's funny, it doesn't fucking matter. And they're able to connect with you where you can laugh at yourself. And And I'm gonna ask you a question in a bit. That this is kind of my segue to this because it was a very funny comic that unfortunately passed away. Ralphie May, big white guy.
Oh yeah.
And what I loved about Ralphie May, he's a big white, straight, heterosexual guy, and he would bust jokes about gays. He would go into an all-black audience and bust jokes about black people, and we would laugh. Why? Because he was just funny. Like he managed to cut through the bullshit and just make us laugh about ourselves. So,
well, and Ralphie, I'll tell you, I met Ralphie twice.
Oh, cool.
And he is that's who he is off stage. That's how he sounds. That's how he walks, and that's how he carried himself. And Ralphie's, I'll tell you, especially when you talk about Ralphie performing in front of large crowds of black people in the United States, Ralphie wasn't wrong. Whatever Ralphie was saying, whatever like he does a bit about going to black movie theaters to watch.
Yes, I just shared that with a friend.
And he's talking about how like watermelon Jolly Ranchers are the best flavor. And I saw him do that bit on a special, and I saw him do it live at DC Improv. And every black person in the room was like, yep. They're like, yeah, that's exactly it.
And the ladies with the architect hair.
Oh yeah. Well, and the thing is, when you listen to Ralphie tell those jokes, that's because he was there.
Yes.
Yeah, my point. And this, that question that you asked about, truthfulness versus funny, you're supposed to be honest anyway. You don't get to decide when to tell the truth and when not to on stage, and I'll tell you why, because audiences will know.
Yes,
they'll know when you're bullshitting, man. When you get up on that stage, you're standing on the lip of a shark tank, and if you got a cut on your finger, you bleed in that tank, they're gonna circle, and they can smell a phony, and they can smell bullshit. And so that's why guys like Ralphie May and guys like Gary Owen recently got talked about because of that Cat Williams thing on the Club Shay Shay interview. And they were talking about, he said that's why Gary Owen hasn't broken out, because Gary Owen likes performing in front of black audiences. Gary Owen's not trying to become a millionaire and play the Hollywood game, and that's his authentic self. That's just who he is as a comedian. And I mean, Gary Owen will tell you, he's like, I don't need that much, man. I do good. I make my money on the road. I got my house. I got my cars. I got enough money where I need an accountant. I'm comfortable, but I do it doing what I love. So, and those guys are successful, not because they're honest, because that just comes shining through. They're successful because they're funny in those rooms where they are. And that's all you need. That's all you need.
Now we got another question here, and before we get to the question, because we're talking about this idea of being authentic and being there. I'm sure you've been in the expat groups here in Brazil and talked to, a lot of expats. And one thing we sometimes, we criticize Brazilians about is because they can sometimes get touchy-feely when we talk about their culture, which makes sense. I think every culture is like that. You're an outsider. It's like you can beat up your own brother, but
exactly.
Don't let somebody else beat up your brother.
The family of Catholic siblings, they beat they beat the hell out of one another on a daily basis. But if a stranger comes into the front yard, we're all ganging up on them.
Exactly. So I'm going to ask a question, which is going to lead right into best way to deal with hecklers, which is, how have you dealt with that? Like, have you poked fun at Brazilians? Have you poked fun at Cariocas? And how do they respond? And have you had hecklers in your show, and how do you deal with them?
Okay, we'll take it one at a time. One, absolutely, and I say this because I live here, I pay my taxes, and I'm a permanent resident here, and I don't get to vote. So as a permanent resident, I have taxes to pay, but I don't get a vote. And so, and I tell people, after a decade here and paying my taxes and doing my time and getting my salary in Haitian and taking the bus and the metro along with all of you, okay, I got just as much right to complain as everybody else. So I'll sit, and it's not, and I don't, when I complain, I don't complain in comparison to where I'm from. I don't say shit like that. I say, what the hell is the mayor doing? I'll point at a pothole and be like, dude, I got here in 2011. That thing was more shallow than it is now. And people will look at me and they're like, yeah, no, right on. Yeah, what he said. So I don't. To me, I think that culture, like, I know that it's important to protect culture. I know that cultural identity is super huge, but it's a very ripe area for comedy. There are just some things that Brazilians do, just like there are some things that Americans do, that when they do them abroad, they look like aliens, and people are like, what the hell are these people doing? Just like you see Americans down here with black socks and sandals on the beach. This thing about Brazilians like taking selfies in line at Disney and talking loud and annoying everyone in the line. It's a cultural thing because they're very exuberant. So it's in to them, they don't see it, but you see it as an outsider. I use it, but I use it very lovingly. And what I always try to do is I always try to tell them is that, yes, I'm about to make fun of your culture, but I'm going to make fun of mine too while I do it, so that we can both kind of laugh at the absurdity of both. Like I have a bit where I say that, I don't know if you've noticed this or not, but Brazilians have started copying what Americans do when they're naming their children. Like in America, sometimes we name our children after expensive shit. So you'll meet women and they're like, these are my 3 daughters, Tiffany, Chanel, and Mercedes. And if you walk around Brazil, some Brazilian women are doing the same thing, but it's like, hi, these are my triplets. Their names are gasoline, electricity, and and ground beef. And it's just funny drawing the parallel between, like, because when Brazilians hear that, they don't go, oh my God, he's making fun of our culture. They go, yeah, Jesus Christ, the light bill was ridiculous this month.
Exactly.
It's not about me. It's just funny, like what it's like, because that's what's to working class people, which is me, and to to people who are living, like real lives here on planet Earth. Yeah, the light bill's expensive. If you have a car, it's expensive to put gas in it. So when they hear that, they're not mad at me because I'm like making fun of Brazilian culture. They're like, oh wow, this guy gets it. This guy knows what he knows what's actually going on with people who have to live here. So that's always my center. That's why I say that it's more important to be funny, because I'm not. A lot that question about truth versus funny is probably the best question of the night, because a lot of people get it twisted, and you have comedians who now their version of telling the truth is it's always at the cost of somebody's feelings, and they in turn use that to say things like, I'm being canceled, or oh look how I really got this group all riled up.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not doing it to get to any other kind of grand end other than to create hype for themselves. Because if they didn't have that hype, they would just be a mid-level comedian. So it's a way to drum up drama. It's a way to drum up heat, for your act, and to say, ooh, look at what a bad boy I am.
Let me ask you with the hecklers, because we got a lot of questions here. How do you deal with the hecklers down here?
Hecklers, I'll tell you what, we're very lucky. We don't get a lot. We don't get too many of them, because most of the time when people are there, I think that they understand what a special, unique thing is that we're doing. And so there's not this like sense of entitlement amongst the crowd. Everyone's kind of there, and it's this hodgepodge of Brazilians and foreigners and expats who live here and things like that. So everybody's really kind of there to see the show. Thank goodness. Mm-hmm. We've had a few. I've had, we had incident, like there was a venue last year where we were performing. This is okay. So here's a great heckler story. As I say, we get a few when we get them, boy, do we get them. So there was a club that we were performing at not a club, but a bar. And this only happens at bar shows. It never happens at like theater shows. And so we're doing a bar show here in Copa, and this guy was drunk, and he was already not happy about the fact that a comedy show was going to take place to begin with. Like, he started before the microphone was even turned on. And so he he was berating the performers outside. He was saying that, yo, you guys suck. You're terrible. You should pack it up. Da 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 da. And I was emceeing the show, and so he decided that he was going to begin to throw change at me and throw coins at me. And, you know, I'm not a small man, you know, and I'm an East Coast guy. So my tolerance for bullshit is pretty low. And so, you know, the first time he did it, you know, I kind of looked at him. I was like, I think you dropped something. He was like, no, I didn't drop it. I threw it at you. And I was like, so we've established that you're drunk, but like, how bad are you? And he's like laughing and giggling. And I was like, no, really, how drunk are you? Because no one in their right mind would do that to me and think that they're going to walk out of here on both legs. And, you know, and the room kind of got real chilly. And he came in and he threw another coin at me. And it was right about that time that I stopped the show. And I told him that, you know, if we're going to start throwing things, I've got a folding table and a wine bottle here. We can go tit for tat if you want to, you know, and that sent a chill over the room. And kind of broke things down. But, you know, that was really the only time that I think I said something to the effect, because when I said that to him, you know, I told him, I said, I'm not kidding. Like, if you throw one more thing at me, the show is over, and one of us is going to the hospital, if not both. And I stopped and I told people at the show, I said, is everyone here having a good time? You know, yeah. And I go, okay. So if we're all having a good time, then I'm just gonna say that was a glitch in the matrix and that was a one-time thing. But please,
Boyce, I gotta stop you. I got like an important bit of information here. Some insider info.
Oh,
it was João Velho who did this. This is coming straight from Vinny. Yeah, João Velho throwing coins at you, guys.
No, João didn't do that.
Try to.
No, he was.
By the way, this is a guy. By the way, this is Vinny who says he loves you, but also says that you don't vote because we don't trust you. So that's real love. I see that. I see the love shining through. But yes, guys.
Ooh, I've got some breaking news too. Instead of taking the bus with me to São Paulo, Vinny will be riding a bicycle to the club on March 1st.
Oh, great!
So yeah, I just found that out. Vinny, you'll be riding a bicycle to the show. Did you know that? Ooh, better start doing those squat throws, bitch.
All right. Anyway, listen, I got some more questions here.
Sure.
I got one from Craig, my brother Craig down here in Sorocaba, São Paulo. And he says, "Dear guest, who's your Mount Rushmore for comedy?"
Oh man, great question. I see. I'm a comedy nerd, like I'm a music nerd, so I could easily say, "Oh, well, let's do this by genre," but I'm not going to do that. That's a cop-out answer. Because I know what Craig's asking for. He's like, just give me the ultimate.
Yeah, give me four names.
Man, Eddie Murphy.
Definitely on mine.
Eddie, but everybody's gonna say Richard Pryor, but for me, because as an '80s kid, I never got to see Pryor in his prime, and I know how good he was. But I would have to say, yeah, I would definitely have to say Eddie Murphy for my money. Wow. I would say Eddie Murphy. I would say Bill Hicks when he was in his prime.
Mm-hmm.
Hicks was fantastic. Man, who else? I'm gonna take I put him on my Mount Rushmore. Not in it, and it's the saddest thing in the world because we should have had more content from him. Is Bernie Mac?
Oh yeah.
Bernie Mac. Bernie Mac. I tell you, for all the inspiration I ever had to be a comedian. Anyone who's a comedian, who's a stand-up comedian and needs inspiration, your scene of Rocky running down the avenue in Philadelphia is the clip of Bernie Mac on Def Comedy Jam in the 90s after they had this big blow up in the crowd. They were going to disperse the whole crowd because there were like fights breaking out and all this other shit. And Bernie Mac just comes out on stage and just tells the whole crowd, "I ain't scared of you motherfuckers." And he took the room by the throat. just with that one line, and everyone was like, okay, and everyone just like sits down, and they're like, and he just murders nonstop for the next, like I think it was like 10 or 12 minutes. So yeah, Bernie Mac, Eddie, Bill Hicks. I'm gonna put a new one in there. I would say probably it's probably a toss up between Patton Oswalt or Bill Burr. Burr's great because he almost seems like he doesn't practice. Like it is infuriating. But also I also say Patton Oswalt for his imagination, his use of metaphor, his use of simile, language, vocabulary, and things like that. When I go up, I try not to be just like this, foul-mouthed comedian. And I try to, as an English teacher, I try to use all my grasp of the language, and my whatever eloquence I can muster. And I still fall flat sometimes. But I try to channel, very nice, Vinny, you asshole. At least one of us will be doing cardio. Very good. But yeah, I try to bring some sophistication to it, and Oswald would be one of my heroes. So yeah, I feel comfortable with that 4. I'll probably change it as soon as I get out of this interview.
When it comes to that,
yeah, I would say Eddie, Bernie, Hicks, and Burr for my money.
Cool.
Sure.
When you started talking about English, my favorite, it's actually on my Rushmore of comedy, is George Carlin. I
tell you, I would put Carlin on there, but I think, how would I say this? He's more important as a satirist and a commentator, in my opinion, than he even is as a comedian.
Mm-hmm.
So that I don't even consider, like, I don't like all those guys that I mentioned. To me, they are comedians, and I take them as comedians. And Carlin, I always thought of more like an essayist or like a comment, like a commentator. So I think that's the only reason why I don't put him on there. This is like, I mean, this is I always hate the Mount Rushmore question because it's so tough, and you're gonna piss people off, and you're gonna leave people off that are just like, like, I wish I could put him on there. Like, if I was really gonna make an argument for like a 5th name on there, it's a name that nobody's going to know, but it's Flip Wilson, who was a comedian in the early 60s and up until the Vietnam era. And he didn't break down any walls or really like he wasn't edgy or anything like that. But his delivery, man, and his ease on stage, his poise when he was doing comedy was just unmatched, man. It was like he was, he's just out there playing a bass solo. It was just beautiful. He just, hey, how's everybody doing? Oh, Geraldine. Oh, the devil made me do it. You're like, damn,
yes,
dude, this guy, it's just too easy for this guy.
Yeah, and I get what you're saying with genres, because it is like it's almost like me with the Brazilian stuff I was saying before. Like Nani People, Silvetti, they're like performers. Like I don't see them as stand-up comics, which is kind of like what you're saying with George Carlin, or even one of my favorites, what's her name, Joan Rivers.
Sure.
It's a performance more than here's the setup joke. I mean, it's in there too, but it's like the whole package. And they're older. Sure. They come from a generation, I think, where stand-up comedy was still a performance before it became just a guy writing jokes. And here's my setup.
And if you watch a lot of Carlin's later stuff, the reason why I tell you really the best word to use, and I didn't say this, someone else said it, was that he's an essayist now. Mm-hmm. With the last 3 or 4, because if you pay attention to what he's saying and the material that's being delivered, it's long form. It's like watching like a Sterling Gray monologue or something like that. There's not a lot of like setup, punchline, setup, punchline, setup, punchline. All of his stuff it's longer form pieces, and it's the tags that keep you laughing. It's all the stuff that's connected along the way, building up to, the giant, the sky tearing open and all the green shit pouring out and everyone's Uncle Dave becoming zombified, and things like that at the end. This big, apocalyptic meltdown wrap up of everything that's there. So I don't know. In my opinion, I kind of classify him a little differently, but
I feel you.
Still funny as shit. I mean, I'm not taking a thing away from him.
Oh, here Vinny says Joan Rivers is the reason I do stand up. Well, that's a good reason. She's a fucking legend.
That's because he stole his shoes.
And when is the next show? Guys, it's on the screen. It's going to be on March 1st here in São Paulo, right close to Avenida Paulista.
Yes.
Easy to get to if you don't know São Paulo geography. Easy to get to by metro. In Alameda Santos 1518. I'm going to put that address in the comments right at first comment that you're going to see. It's going to be a pinned comment. I'm going to put Boyce as long as I'm here. There you go.
And that's it. Just to reiterate, that show on March. I mean, we're one night only.
One night only, folks.
So if anyone is in Rio or near Rio, you've got a real good chance of catching us because we're always performing in and around Rio, and so that's always easier to catch us there. But we hope that this show in São Paulo is going to be incredibly successful. With Chris headlining, and if it is, I have every intention of working with with venues in São Paulo to come back as soon as we can.
We will have something to talk to after the show because I just rented a spot downtown for events, so we will have a lot to talk about. But guys, look on the screen if you're not. But if you happen to just be lying in bed listening, Boyce Blake Rio is where you get Boyce's Instagram. You can see here all his stuff. And there's the flyer for the show. And guys, also Clube de Ingressos. I'll post that at the bottom. It's not going to be on Simpla anymore to get the tickets for the show. But that's coming up. It's coming up, guys. It's on a Friday, I believe. Yeah, not this Friday, but next Friday.
Yeah, they foolishly gave us a weekend evening. But no, I was really happy to. I was very pleased to get that night, and so that way, like I said, guys, there's no excuses to miss it. So it's a one timer on Friday at 8, and
exactly.
and we're super honored to be able to perform there too, because I mean that's one of the two big clubs in town, and that's where all the royalty goes through. So we're flattered that they're going to take a chance on us. I know that English stand-up comedy in São Paulo, it's been a real rough road. One of the things that the venue explained to us when we were booking was that essentially they, most of the English nights that they had booked there, they have canceled due to bad sales. Mm-hmm. And I was really sad to hear that, but I like a challenge, like when we started doing shows here in Rio and we were picking up bigger venues and they were like, dude, do you think you can fill a 50-seat venue? And I'm like, sure, yeah, sure we can. And we've managed to do so. We managed to grow really, really well. So I just kind of applied that same strategy to trying to, to get the hype out and get the word out for the show here in São Paulo, because I know there's an audience for this. It's just, it's hard for people to get the information. It's hard for people to know when they're happening. And that's why I'm really grateful for you having me on tonight, because I was really hoping I would get a chance, to get on some podcasts and get the word out, to people that would really be interested.
Oh, cool. I shared this.
I know they're out there. I know you guys are out there in São Paulo. I know you are. I've seen.
We are, and I've already got a couple people that are interested in going. I posted it in a million groups. So, and actually, something that I forget to do at the beginning of every podcast: please like, share, subscribe to the channel. I should do this at the beginning, but I always forget to. But yes, guys, if you're enjoying the conversation, share it with your friends, share it in expat groups, share it. I even shared it in teachers, English teachers groups, because sometimes, guys, it's a great thing. If you're an English teacher, take your students out to watch some stand-up in English. They're going to love it. So there's a lot of stuff. I posted it in the couch surfing groups. Like, I'm all over the place. So hopefully we get a lot of people up in there, and I'm going to be there. So you get to meet me. Boyce, let me see if I got the right music. Oh, yeah. Hear that music? It's the perilous time of the show, Boyce.
Uh-oh.
It's the Expat Challenge.
Oh, man.
I'm telling you, if you fuck up the Expat Challenge, man, like, I'm going to send as many Like, don't go to Boyce's shows. I'm gonna make a flyer on Canva. I'm
They're
gonna
gonna
fuck
be
your life up.
an anti-flyer.
Oh, I'm gonna put an anti-flyer, man, and then I
Oh Lord.
might go to Police Federal and see if I can
Oh,
revoke your permanent residency. Okay,
thank
so
you. No
please
pressure. I'm super excited
do
now.
not fuck up the challenge. Okay, so
Oh boy.
everybody that comes on for the first time, we need to deflower them, and we deflower you by asking you 10 questions, lightning round.
Oh
Okay,
man.
so don't think too hard about it, and just tell me what your answers are to each question. All right,
Okay.
so here's the first one, my friend. Best thing about Brazil.
The food.
I can ride with that, definitely. What's your favorite food?
Man, I know everyone's expecting me to say feijoada, but this is going to shock a lot of people. My favorite dish in Brazil is cozido.
Cozido. All
Cozido.
right, it's lightning round except for me. I get to look shit up online and show it on the screen. Oh, this is delicious. Okay, there you go. Worst thing about Brazil. Oh, I didn't show the cozido. There's the cozido, guys. Worst thing about Brazil.
Worst thing about Brazil. Open corruption.
I can feel on that one. Well, I already asked you your favorite Brazilian food, so there you go. We got the cozido on the screen, guys. That looks delicious.
Drooling right now.
Least favorite Brazilian food.
Oh, easy. Acarajé.
Oh, really?
Just the smell of óleo de dendê makes me. I will go running in the other direction. Sorry, Bahia.
No, you know something, dude. Have you had it in Bahia?
I've had it like 5 different ways, and it's to me, it's like, for example, I hate eggplant, and every time I tell people every time I tell someone that, their answer is that's because you haven't had my eggplant, and then I eat their eggplant, and I hate their eggplant, and
Okay, yeah, I hate that.
Thing.
Yo,
acarajé is the same thing. Oh, you just hate acarajé because you haven't had my grandmother's acarajé. She's from Bahia. Let her make it for you here. I have it. I eat it. I swallow it. I smile, and then I die a little inside.
I feel you. And I hate it when people say that, but I will say this, folks. I've been here in Brazil for like more than 10 years. I had a acarajé for the first time in São Paulo, and I wanted to throw up. Like, it's on my Instagram. Like, I just did a reaction video. But then I went to Salvador for the first time this past year, and I had an acarajé there. And that shit changed my life, man. That was not like I even told the old.
I hear you,
and
I swear, and I listen, Bahia listeners, I swear to you, if I go, I'll have one there just to settle it, and just to say like whether or not there's any hope. But
I'll tell you what, check this out. I had it from the lady that was selling it in a little cart, whatever, little truck. Mm-hmm. I told her, I was like, I'll buy you a ticket to São Paulo to go kick some people's ass. That's not a acarajé that they sell down there. But then I had it another night in a restaurant, and it wasn't that good. So my thing is, find an old, black, fat Bahian woman in a truck that's just making it with all the street grime and all that wonderful stuff that adds the extra flavor.
With gigantic arms, because that's like in the South. The bigger the bicep fat is on the woman who's cooking, the more delicious the food will be.
Exactly, and that's the woman that I found, and I wanted to kiss her. I was like, "Good Lord, that changed my life about acarajé." But I feel you. Favorite drink.
Favorite drink here in Brazil.
Non-alcoholic or alcoholic.
Well, alcoholic, and I say that because I've only seen it here in Brazil, and I learned to drink it here in Brazil is a liquor called Steinhager.
Oh my God, how do you spell that? Stein?
I think like Steinhager, the same way you would a
like that.
You go, Nacional. Where's it at? Right there in the first. Yeah.
No, this first one. I've never seen this before.
I think it's German, but it's one of those like German things that Brazilians made their own. And when it's really, really, really cold, we have nicknamed that stuff werewolf juice. Because the night takes a hard turn once you get into that stuff.
Oh, I gotta find this drink. I've never seen this down here.
Yeah, buddy. Yeah, it's a 1-2 punch.
Oh, good
It's
Lord.
like catching an overhand right from Mike Tyson.
What's the best place you have visited in Brazil?
Wow. It's a place that probably no one listening will ever go, and some people listening may have already been. It's the Costa Verde, the Green Coast, right about an hour and 20 minutes outside of Rio.
Awesome here.
There's a series of little islands out there. There you go. And one of the places that living in Rio, everyone goes, oh, so when you go on vacation, you go where? You go to Buzios, you go to Arraial do Cabo. And I tell them, yeah, I used to go to those places until I found a place called Ilha do Jaguanum. And that's Jaguanum. There you go. And I hope if I'm lucky, that's where I'll die. So yeah, that's my happy place. That's my wallpaper on my phone. There's a couple little houses over there that we've rented and I vacation there off and on. And there's just a vibe on that island that I just want to grow what's left of my hair out and never wear shoes again. And yeah, that's my happy place.
Oh, nice guy. All right,
Mhm.
next question is 1 second here. Most overrated location or thing in Brazil?
Oh wow, man, most overrated. Wow, that's a big one. Um, Pão de Açúcar in Rio. Let's wait 45 minutes to go up on top of a really big hill and see the city from another angle. It's the same thing you can see from the Christ. If you go up to Corcovado here, and Corcovado, they have it's the same. You can see it's about a 320-degree angle up on the top if there's no fog, and you're at the Christ. But when you go up on top of Sugarloaf, it's just 50 guys trying to sell you keychains, and then another 5 guys trying to get you to spend 500 hash on a helicopter tour. It's nice, but when people say, "Oh, we've got one day, should we do the Christ or should we do the Pão de Açúcar?" I always recommend to do the Christ.
Man, and I'm the opposite because I did the Christ and I was unimpressed and I fell in love with Pão de Açúcar. I think because there's more space up there. There's that little that little park, whatever.
Yeah, you know what?
There's a
You got to
restaurant.
in Portuguese we would say tem razão, porque when you go up to the Christ, it's really packed. It's always full of tourists. But
Yeah.
I've always liked the view up there. I've liked the vibe up there more.
hmm
If I don't know, I would. Oh, okay. Overrated. Buzios.
Okay.
Buzios is overrated. There's a couple. There's a couple of. For example, when we've traveled to Buzios before, everyone for some reason, everyone that I've ever gone with wants to drag me to the 4 beaches that are just packed, assholes to elbows the whole time. And I'm a guy where like I have a dog. When I go to the beach, I like to take my dog. I like to let her run. I don't want to see people when I go to the beach. I'm not a big fan of packed beaches. And I live in Copacabana, so explain that. But
Oh,
there's
I,
for example, the one if you tell me, okay, we're going to Buzios, if you take me to Buzios, I will just hang out. There's one beach there called Manguinhos,
hmm
and it's abandoned. That's the only reason why. One, because the water is beautiful and it's very still, and then there's nobody there. Like that's really why. So I don't know. I just never got when people go to Boozer, it's like, let's go to this beach. And you're like, why? They go, because that's where everybody is. I'm like, why the hell would you want to do that? Like, it's just,
exactly. I
there's,
feel that way about São Paulo. Like I always travel off season, and I'm like, why do I want to leave São Paulo during the holidays to be around people from São Paulo? Because they're all
yeah,
going to be
exactly.
where I want to go. And I'm the opposite. Like I want to get away from. Like when I went to Salvador, I went in July. I mean, it
Yeah.
helps because working at the school, that's when we get a month-long vacation. But it works perfect for me. Even when I didn't work at the school, I always travel in the winter because I know it's going to be
Right.
empty. Like I'm trying to get away from people, not
normally as teachers we get the summer break and then we get the July break. And if you're here in Rio, it sucks ass because as soon as you get off, everyone else is off. So when you go to when you go to Buzios, for example, I say Buzios also because everything is when I'm off, everything is like high season tourist priced. So like why would I want to do that? Let's go find some place where nobody else goes, and pay like half price. Like when we go to that island I mentioned before, there's no cars, there's no motorcycles on that island, there's no stores on that island. So you have to take all your food, but that's fine. I don't care. Like, you know what I mean? Like we stay on the fisherman village side. There's a beach called Caiaus, which is on the main island. And that's where all the fishermen live. And that's where I prefer to stay, because everybody leaves you alone. It's like a private beach. My dogs go running up and down, tearing ass. My daughter, all she does all day is do stand up and play volleyball with it. She's friends with all the kids on the island. There's not a cell phone in sight, because you don't get self-service out on the beach. Good. You're not supposed to. Like, go touch sand.
That's it. That's the life. That's the life. Now, let me ask you. Best place to chill in your city, in Rio de Janeiro. What's the best place to chill in Rio?
Best place to chill. Okay, well, you got to define chill. Like hang out, have a drink.
Just hang out, have a good time, see something, meet nice people. Actually, let me know because I'll be in Rio on 8th, 9th, and 10th. So we got to chill when I'm there.
March?
Of March.
No shit. Okay, cool, man. Sweet. There you go. For me, I mean, right now, there's tons of like little one thing that they've done here in Rio that it's a good thing and it's a bad thing is they've completely redone all of the beach kiosks that are here. They used to kind of all be kind of uniform little shacks where you get like, cheap beer and a coconut water and you just kind of sit at a plastic table and, people will just leave you alone. And what they've done is they've remodeled all these kiosks by concepts. So there's ones that have like Italian food and they have like Mexican food and stuff like that. So there's a few of them that they're not as pretentious as some of the others where you can grab a chair, you can put your feet up, it's still kind of like a pesujo a little bit where you can get like a drink and you can watch the water. But in terms of like going out, I mean, like Santa Teresa is amazing. Botafogo's great. There's tons of great bars in Botafogo now where, they all have, personality and they've got different types of live music. People always say Lapa when they come to Rio, that's like the classic, go hang out night, go hang out for the night spot. And Lapa's great too. Lapa's always fun to go hang out. But yeah, I would say right now, like my favorite spots to do that would be like Botafogo and like either Santa Teresa, places in Flamengo. It's not technically, they say it's not Rio. But when you go to Barra de Tijuca, which is, kind of on the other side where the Olympics were here, there's a place called Ilha Gigoia.
I'm gonna meet a friend there. He lives there.
And I always say it's the closest thing that Rio has to Diagon Alley from like Harry Potter. Because you don't know where you are when you're there. When you're there, you're like, I feel like it could be Rio, but it doesn't feel like Rio proper. When you're on the island, it's something far more different and magical with these little like narrow alleyways and like, cats and dogs everywhere. And just a completely different vibe. But it's awesome to go out there. There's some beautiful restaurants that are out on the water. I had a lunch with friends of mine at an Italian place about a month ago on Gigoia. And they put like lounge chairs outside so you can just like sit out on the water, after you eat. And it's just, it's amazing. I'm
down. Shout out to Sam. He's been on the podcast before. He's a British guy who lives there and like, it looks absolutely gorgeous. So that's definitely a place I'm going to visit when I get up there.
When I'm in my new apartment now. When I moved in August, there was a hot minute where I was entertaining possibly looking for a place on Gigoia because it just seemed really cool to live there. But you have to take a boat to get to the metro.
Exactly.
So I could foresee myself waking up late one morning and being like, shit, I gotta get the boat. Like
I missed the boat. You gotta swim to work.
Exactly. Literally being like, should I buy a stand-up paddle to try to save money? Like what should I be doing right now? And,
anyway,
what's the next one?
Boys. favorite Brazilian musician or band?
Oh wow. Man, God, I mean, you're talking about a litany of people. Right now, I would say, well, I'll make that a right now answer.
Yeah.
Who I'm really into right now is Rogério Skylab.
Let me put him on the screen. I actually don't know this guy. It's Rogério Skylab. And what does he do?
It's like punk rock and rock on a very extensive acid trip.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, he's
attention.
very. Yeah, I would say that if you call him punk rock or you call him like noise or whatever you want to call him, you're not adequately describing it. So it kind of defies explanation. But yeah, he's like the guy that I'm currently kind of obsessed with in Brazilian music.
Cool. Love it. I'm going to check him out.
Mhm.
And then the last question. You've made it so far. I've put the phone down. I had the Polícia Federal number right here by my side. Word of advice for future visitors to Brazil.
Understand, especially to Americans, understand something. You grew up being told that you live to work. Here we work to live. And one of the most important basic rights to anyone walking on Brazilian soil is the right to your own leisure time. And the right to relax properly. And if you can learn to do that and you can learn to relax, you'll have the greatest time of your life when you're here.
Learn to relax. Words of wisdom. It's something that I had to learn here because,
Mm-hmm.
not like, because Jersey people are the most relaxed people on planet Earth.
Yeah.
Jersey to Philly, because I went to school in Philly. So we're super chill. And yeah, that's something I had to learn how to do.
Well, picture me coming from the States, having been in the restaurant industry, working as a bar manager, and then also working in commission sales for restaurant supply.
Oh, God.
And I changed careers over to education. And when I did that, I literally, one of the courses I was working at, I had 3 of my coworkers come up to me. We were getting ready for the July break. And everyone is kind of like with their feet up. They're like, dude, we're just killing time until this day is over. And I'm in the teacher's room, like putting together extra worksheets and doing more than I had to. Mm-hmm. And they said, if you don't stop, we're gonna murder you. And I was like, what'd I do? They're like, you're making everyone look bad for no reason. Okay, other than to let everyone know that you're working harder than everyone else. And there's no trophy for that in this situation, and there's no reward for that. So could you please stop? And at first I was very indignant about that. I was like, see, this is what's wrong with Brazil. And but then it was one of those no. It was work is work and play is play. And you've been used to that not being the case for a long time, and you need to get with the program because you are not in your country. It's different here.
Yeah. It's like and that Depeche Mode song, enjoy the silence.
Yeah. Once you wrap your head around that, you're good to go. The Portuguese will come. The understanding of how things work here will come. It will all come much more organically.
Yeah, and you'll stress out less. You'll stress out way less.
For
just
for sure.
I mean, sometimes stuff that needs to happen quick, I'm like, but 90% of the stuff that you think needs to happen quick doesn't necessarily need to happen quick.
Well, because you're looking at things on your internal timer. You're not looking at your things on the world clock, and those things are going to happen when they're going to happen when they're supposed to happen. So,
You said the magic words. Look at this, guys. I'm going to have Boyce give a few final words here to promo the show. But there's the site here, My Fucking Comedy Club. And also, if you're looking at the screen, look at how nice I am. There it is on the map. Look at that. There's the metro right there. You're basically walking a block and making a left. Or you can walk a little bit more if you want to see the scenery. Get off at Consolação. But it's right by the MASP Museum, right behind the Trianon MASP Park. And
I love,
yeah.
I love that. I love the fact that my fucking comedy club is like a golf ball's throw away from the Museum of Fine Art in São Paulo.
Oh yeah. No,
So
but it's
nice.
right next to a park that there's like a bunch of prostitutes there at night, so it all blends
Fabulous.
in
Oh, Phil,
perfectly.
thank you, man. You were just a well of important information.
Oh goodness, thank you. I used to be a tour guide down here, so I know all the good
There you
spots
go.
for any of your needs.
Fabulous.
But anyway, guys, come see this guy. He's awesome. I mean, even before I knew he was doing stand up, like every time I saw him when we were working together, I'm like, it's Boyce. You know, he's got the personality. Like I said, half of the work is done because he's just a good guy to be
Thanks, man.
around.
Appreciate it.
It's just a matter of writing the jokes, and he's
Oh,
a funny dude.
you're a sweetheart.
And I'll be there. So you can meet me.
Love
and I love to meet. Like it's so weird, boys, when sometimes I'll meet some people. Actually, I think were you the one that when I was in Vitória and you're like, "Are you Phil from Brazil?" If it wasn't you, it's somebody else, and it's like
No, I
years
did.
ago.
Yeah, that's kind of well because the funny part was is that I knew you from teaching, and then I followed you on Twitter, and then I just did. It's just one of those things where you just don't make the connection at first.
Yeah.
And then we were at, I think it was like that second conference, and I said, I was like, "Are you Phil in Brazil, like from Twitter?" And you're like, "Yeah." I was like, "Oh man." I was like,
Cool.
"Damn." I was like, "Oh, okay," because also at that time I was doing my podcast too.
Yes, I remember.
And I was,
Yeah.
and I remember we said that we were going to try to hook up and collab, and then like right after that is when COVID hit, and
Exactly.
I was like, all right, coffin nail. So
Exactly. That's when I started mine during COVID. So actually,
right
the very,
on,
very first episode of the BJ is about COVID.
right,
So yeah, a lot of time has passed, but a lot of good times, and I'm glad that you found your lane and you're doing what you love. And thank you everybody who listened in because this is what I love, and I'm
Mhm.
so grateful to people that listen to the podcast and comment and everybody that commented here live because it's even more
Great
fun.
questions, by the way. I love the questions
Definitely,
that came from everybody. Those were really
definitely.
cool questions.
All right, my man. It is 11:30 at night. I do have to get up tomorrow.
You and me both, bro.
So, guys, like I said, I'm gonna put the address and everything in the comment section. You can follow Boyce at Boyce Blake Rio on Instagram. Follow his page. And I'm gonna play some outro music. And boys, stay on the line even after I end the stream so I can just give you a little
Sure,
personal
sure.
goodbye. And now I'm gonna put on my NPR voice and say thank you for listening to the Brazil Expat Journal, the BJ you can trust. We'll be back again next week, or maybe the week after, or maybe a month later, with more stand-up, a Brazilian stand-up, and it'll be our second attempt at a Portuguese version of the BJ. Thanks everybody that listened to that one. Obrigado todo mundo que ouviu o BJ em português. Please like, share, subscribe, and have a wonderful evening. We're out. Bye, guys.